Naloxone and the owner of the new people's car company, Tesla, were the inspiration for this week. Hi, I'm Tanya, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Threshold. And this week we are going to be talking about discernment, how we can use it as a tool for decision making, how we can use it to navigate the chaos, how we can use it to protect our authenticity, and how to use it in order to keep ourselves accountable and to keep others accountable. Discernment is going to be how we see clearly in a world that is thriving on chaos. To begin, I'd like to define what I mean by discernment. Discernment to me is a compass. It's a compass for us to use to determine for ourselves what is real, to determine where to place our energy, and to align ourselves to our own truth and our own values. Discernment can be used to protect our authenticity, which brings me back to last week and how important it is to be authentic. And discernment is how we can ground ourselves in this aforementioned chaotic world that we're living in. Discernment is hard for a few reasons. One being the noise factor. We are living in an attention economy, and what I mean by that is that our attention is big bucks, and as a result, people, organizations, companies are competing for that attention. And the goal is not clarity. The goal is for them to control us and to control our attention. Another reason why discernment is difficult is because our brain is wired to take shortcuts, but those shortcuts come at a cost. So shortcuts make our thinking quicker, but it doesn't make it truer or more logical or have depth. Shortcuts often come in the form of bias, in paying attention to what we want to hear, or confirmation bias, only hearing what confirms what we already think. It can come in putting our trust in authority figures just because they're authority figures, not necessarily because they hold the truth. It can come in just reading headlines or only pay attention to headlines and not going deeper into the full article, the full explanation. And all of this can lead to us being more easily manipulated. Discernment can also shift us away from responsibility and ethics. And that brings me back to the naloxone and why I happen to have this. I have this because, unbeknownst to me, the Canadian government is providing it free, the whole kit, when one purchases opioids. Now, the opioids weren't even for me. They were for a family member who's just had a medical treatment. And I would say that that's me going to the pharmacy is what sort of started me thinking about this episode this week, because I really couldn't sort of believe that this is the world that we were living in. I get to the pharmacy, I have the prescriptions, I'm asked if I have identification, because one of the prescriptions was an opioid. They have to take your identification. They even wrote down my license number and all that stuff. And that's fine and everything, except the prescription wasn't for me, it was for the family member. And it seems like a drug that is meant to help you shouldn't require that kind of security. I'm not saying that the security is bad. I'm saying that the drug is the problem, not the security. And then I found out that when I was having the conversation with the pharmacist, that the naloxone kit comes from the government. So there we go. That's taxpayers' dollars. And so this is what kind of set me off thinking about what I was discerning for myself in this scenario. The first thing I was thinking about was, if the naloxone kits are required, and it would appear that they are because there's plenty of news about the opioid crisis and opioid addictions and all that kind of thing, then why is the government paying for it? Why doesn't the government just force drug companies to provide it with their opioids? But that, to me, is only the surface of the question, the problem, or the question, or this, what have you. The next thing I was thinking about was, why is this drug even allowed to exist if it is so dangerous that it actually spurred the government to act? I'm not saying the government shouldn't have acted. I'm happy when the government acts often, but this is such a bad thing that is caused by these opioids, that the government acted swiftly, and it would appear with some effect, because I'm now in possession of this. And then the next question I had was, it seems to me that opioids are only masking pain and not getting to the root of it. And that, I think, is the key with discernment. Discernment is the ability to get to the actual root of a problem, or the truth, or the values, to get through all the noise. And so in this case, discernment would have us critically examine systems that we're a part of and ask questions like, does this align with my values? Am I okay with how we handle things? What can I do to push for change? Who benefits? And I think, really importantly, what alternative might we not be exploring, right? So the opioid is masking the pain, but maybe we should be exploring how to get rid of the pain in the first place. And I think that applies in a lot of places. So I would say here that discernment is more than a reflection. It is accountability. And speaking of accountability, that brings me to the other half of the inspiration for this episode, which is Elon Musk. And I saw what he did. Okay? And since then, all I have seen and heard are excuses, downplaying, denial, but I haven't heard any accountability for those actions of his. And so I have discerned that I don't believe the people around him. I don't believe him. And I would ask, or not ask, I would remind the people, him and the people around him and his supporters, of the old German saying that goes something like this: if there is a Nazi at the table and 10 other people are talking to him, you have 11 Nazis at the table. And so questions, I think, that arise from these kinds of scenarios are, am I staying silent out of convenience? By tolerating things, am I enabling them? And is this even a table I would like to be sitting at? Discernment is very important in our personal life as well. How often do you, or have you, accepted what's handed to you, be it a belief, a career path, a relationship, without asking yourself if it's actually right for you? Some questions to think about when trying to discern or make decisions in your personal life could be things such as, does this align with my values? Am I doing it because it's expected or because it feels true? And that sort of circles back to another episode we did about shoulds and doing things because we should. We could also ask ourselves, what alternatives might exist that I haven't explored? Kind of like that, the same question that we can ask with that naloxone example. Some tools that we can create for ourselves in order to help build discernment include the following. We can pause before we react. There's often a false sense of urgency around things, and that is designed to get us to react without thinking. So take the pause. Take as long as you need to decide something. You can ask yourself, is this eliciting strong emotions for me? Emotions like anger, shame, fear. If so, that might be by design to get you to act and to act rashly. You can clarify your values. So maybe come up with your top 5 values and use those as criteria for making decisions and discerning things. Ask critical questions, things such as who benefits, what's being hidden, what is the long-term impact. Limit your inputs, meaning it's up to you to curate one of your most precious commodities, and that's your attention. If your attention wasn't important, we wouldn't have built an entire economy around it, right? But you are in charge of your attention. So use your discernment about where you would like it to go and flow. We can look for alternative perspectives. We can be curious and not defensive when someone questions us or puts forth a different reason or viewpoint from our own. And we can practice accountability. And sometimes that means acting and not just knowing. So not just knowing that you like something or you dislike something, but actually acting upon it. So I'd love us to practice that right now. So I have a little challenge for you. I want you to think of, you can either think of it or write it down, a real world example from your life. It could be a news story or a belief or a decision that you're making. And think about the scenario in full or write it down. And then I want you to ask yourself 3 questions about it. The first question is, what is the narrative that I'm being told about this? The second is, what alternative might exist that I'm not exploring? That has been my favorite question to come out of this whole thing. What alternative might exist that I'm not exploring? Because I think there must be a better way for many things in life. And thirdly, does this align with my values and truth? And again, once we're trying to live authentically, and we've been practicing, we'll be more familiar with our values. We'll be more familiar. We'll know ourselves better. That will make it easier for us to discern things in our personal life and discern things when we see them happening in the world around us. So feel free, if you want to comment in the comments what you uncovered when you asked yourself those 3 questions. So to conclude, I think that discernment is like a Swiss Army knife, in that it is a multiple tools with multiple uses. So it's a shield from the noise. It's like scissors to cut through manipulation. It's a compass to enable us to stay true to ourselves, to choose intentionally. And when I'm talking about choosing intentionally, I'm talking about things like to choose in what you believe, to choose how you act, to choose how to navigate systems that don't always serve. So think about what is one area in your life where you think you could use some more discernment, and start there. And ask those questions, explore the alternatives, and see where it leads. Discernment is how we step beyond the threshold, and beyond the threshold out of confusion and into clarity. And I'll see you next week.